All right, welcome to the show. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and we have a truly remarkable man here we're speaking to, Corey Goode, who has come forward as an insider telling us about this remarkable new world of what has been called the secret space program. Corey, the scope of this program might be hard for some people to accept. Granted, we went to the moon in 1969. Some people would say we allegedly went to the moon, but it certainly appears that we did at least do some real things on the moon. And then we never went back. They put the flag in there, they ran a few missions, and oh, we're done. We saw what we need to see. So I think if you're going to think about people settling outside Earth at all, most people, if they could even imagine that, would say, well, it's probably not that much. What's the real scope of what we're dealing with? When the truth comes out, what are we going to learn?
Well, it's going to be overwhelming to learn that there is a vast infrastructure throughout the entire solar system with everything from mining operations and the asteroid belt and on moons and planets to procure raw materials, to industrial complexes that produce technologies and colonies of human beings that work in those industrial complexes and support this large industrial machine that is throughout our solar system.
We couldn't build a base inside a gas planet, right? Because it gets too hot and there's too much air pressure?
Yeah, too much pressure.
So if we wanted to look for these colonies, where would we be looking?
Colonies are basically what we call the area to where families and people live.
Okay.
There are also all types of different types of facilities. There are facilities inside hollowed out asteroids that they've mined. There are facilities spread out across Mars, underneath, of course, underneath the surface of Mars, various moons of gas giants, and even our own moon.
Could you try to give us an estimate of how many different facilities or different places that have been built there are? Like, let's say, in our solar system?
In our solar system, everything from small security outposts that man 18 to 40 people on Mars alone, to facilities that float around in different Lagrange points throughout the solar system.
Could you tell us what a Lagrange point is?
They're areas between planets or bodies that have an uninterrupted gravitational or a equal gravitational pull from all areas, to where they can have kind of a geosynchronous or stationary point to stay. I really don't have a firm number. There are hundreds of facilities out there.
What would be some of the larger facilities in terms of the staff, the amount of crew that they would have?
Well, when we talk about colonies, we're talking about some of the larger ones that, have upwards of a million people.
Really?
Yeah.
How many do you think there would be of that kind of size of population?
I don't think there's a whole lot that have that large of populations, but quite a few that have in the hundreds of thousands.
Does it get colder and harder to live in a place as you get farther away from the sun?
That's where advanced technology comes in.
Okay.
We can produce the living conditions that are comfortable to us anywhere. And even the Schumann resonance that occurs here on Earth, that the Earth puts off a certain vibratory resonance that keeps plants and humans healthy. That Schumann resonance is piped into spacecraft and facilities colonies to help keep the people healthy. And the barometric pressure, the gravity is controlled.
I was just going to ask about the gravity. Obviously, the Earth has a certain mass, and the gravitational acceleration, 10 meters per second squared, is proportional to the Earth's mass.
Mm-hmm.
So with the moons, it's believed by NASA, they talk about this, that you would bounce around. So how do they compensate for that if it's smaller?
Well, they have gravity plating, just like they do in the vessels, interlocking plating that are in the floors that have electricity applied to it that creates a electrogravitational field that creates artificial gravity.
What are the size of the plates? Do they vary, or?
The plates are, they vary in sizes because you have different size hallways, but they are, plates about this thick that interlock like like children's toys, building block toys, that interlock or dovetail together.
So can you just give us a little more information about what would be the major categories? You said one type of a category of a place that would be built, an installation, would be a place where people live. Is that strictly utilitarian, like just a whole bunch of rooms where they bunk, or do they have like a nice big atrium with a waterfall? Do they have big common meeting areas and like auditoriums?
Usually when I was on the research vessel, we didn't normally get to visit them. These were owned by the ICC. They were corporate-owned colonies. If they did not have access to one of their own people to fix a critical piece of machinery or technology that was damaged, there was usually a specialist aboard our research vessel that had that expertise. And then in those special occasions, we were allowed to go to the colonies under strict orders to not talk or interact with any of the people at the facilities or the colonies. We were under armed guard. We were not offered tours, not offered a meal. We were escorted straight to the location to where we were to do maintenance, and then escorted straight back to our vessel to leave. So,
could you come to Earth whenever you wanted while you were doing this work?
No. When you were doing your 20 and away, you were totally cut off from Earth news, everything Earth related. We didn't get any news, any television, any information about what was going on at Earth.
Were you allowed to bring books or magazines with you to read?
No, you didn't even have pictures of your family and anything like that. All you had is what was given to you when you reported.
You talked before about these smart glass pads. Did you get access to those when you were on this research vessel?
When you're on duty, yes.
Okay. Did they know what you did? Was there a surveillance record of whatever you tried to look up with them?
I'm sure there was. Yeah, on the research vessel, it was a lot more laid back than I hear things are on the military vessels. They always called the scientists eggheads. They were perfectly fine. A lot of the time, I got to spend a lot of time looking at the smart glass pads. There was a lot of downtime for me. Everybody had redundancy training. You didn't just have one job. I was trained in doing communications and a few other things. But a lot of the time, I would be in one of the labs when some of the other work was done, and I would just have hours to spend looking at the glass pads.
So let's talk about recreation for a minute. People Are they more apt to hang out and talk to each other? Or are they more apt to fuss around with the glass pads and be alone and just try to read more interesting things? What was?
You mainly only have access to the glass pads when you're on duty.
Oh, when you're on duty.
Right. When you had, off time, or when you were in the galley or whatever, you were going to communicate with other people and hear the scuttlebutt and what's going on. And
did you have certain people that were like your close friends?
I was mainly in tight with some of the eggheads or scientists because I spent a lot of time with them. I was assigned to one bunk area that usually 18 to 24 people were assigned. And I'd get to know some people, but people rotated in and out a lot.
There was a lot of turnover?
Mm-hmm.
What was the kind of thing that you would talk about with these people? I mean, it's hard for most of us watching the show to imagine what it would be like to live in this world. Does it become ordinary after a while? Does it get boring after a while?
Yeah, it's very boring. You'd talk about work. You'd talk about what possibly was going on back on Earth sometimes. Speculate about what other people were studying when we were assigned to study certain things. Just your normal kind of, chit chat.
How often did you visit various facilities when you were on this research vessel? You said you were on there for 6 years before.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was a rare occasion. There were three different times that we visited actual colonies. And we visited the industrial complexes several times to do repairs. And
that would be more like a factory type of facility?
Like a factory. And then there was one occasion that we actually went to a mining operation that was in the asteroid belt.
What would that look like?
It was really just a three-man kind of operation inside of an asteroid. They were operating mainly robotic and remote-controlled apparatuses.
So only 3 staff were needed to run it?
3 people that would rotate.
What was the size of the actual construction itself? Like, how big was this area that was built?
Well, this was an extremely large asteroid, and it grew larger and larger as they were mining it. So
how could it grow larger? I don't understand.
The inside space.
Oh, the size of the hole.
The size of the inside space of the hole was growing larger and larger and larger. You could see, they started off, digging, and they were making more and more progress into this one large asteroid.
So if you only visited 3, you said 3 colonies and then other industrial facilities, but you were out there for 6 years, that doesn't sound like you had that doesn't sound like the main thing you were doing.
No, it wasn't super exciting. We were also, a lot of what we did is we were studying pretty much, I guess you would call them exo-extremophiles. There are, I guess, modern biology and science are going to have to redefine what life is based on what I saw being studied, the life I saw being studied. There was plasma life, other types of energetic type of life that were basically like giant amoebas that were feeding off of the electromagnetic field of Jupiter. They tried to get specimens of those. They were so large they would get small specimens that would basically die or somewhat putrefy. They weren't able to.
What was it about them that made the space program decide they were actually alive?
Well, they were not just alive. They showed signs of being sentient.
Really?
Yeah. They were self-aware. They had preservation of life characteristics. There were a lot of things they did testing on them that I guess wouldn't be extremely ethical to figure out.
Well, I think your typical conventional view of biological life is it has to eat, it has to excrete, it has to have locomotion,
Has to have
it has to have respiration.
neurology, certain, yeah.
Right. You're going to have cells, you're going to have biological material.
Yeah, carbon-based life, and I guess, but
So this life doesn't have a cellular structure. It's not like the plasma is interconnected by cells.
no. But they behaved like single-cell organisms in the way they reproduced.
They actually reproduce.
Yeah, I guess, what is it, mitosis, or whatever, where they split.
Right.
And there was also some ocean life under one of the moons of Jupiter, under ice, that was studied.
Like Europa?
Yeah, that were somewhat like whales or dolphins.
Really?
Yeah. So there's quite a bit out there that the scientific people are studying.
How common would biological life be in our solar system? Where do you find it?
It's pretty much everywhere if you include on the microscopic level. It's pretty much everywhere. You can even find it free floating in space, freeze-dried.
Right. When we get beyond microbial life, do you actually find little guys that can walk around on these moons, like out around Jupiter, the moons of Jupiter? I know you said Europa, which is a watery moon, but what about a dry moon? Would there be life that could live inside the surface of a dry moon?
There's life on, there was some life on Mars. There was some small animal life that mainly is burrowing, that digs. There's plant life on Mars that's very, what would you call something that grows in a desert, very robust, or there was this one bush that was purple and red that had huge thorns on it, and it was kind of a squatty bush, and it had pointy leaves that were like thorns at the tip that were kind of striped purple and red.
How would you go out to see those bushes? Would you have to wear a suit of some kind?
Yeah, there was a lightweight suit, not a heavy pressure suit.
Did it have like a glass helmet kind of thing?
Yeah, and a respirator.
So let's go back to the vessel for a minute. How many people did you bunk with on the vessel?
There would be, it ebbed and flowed anywhere. There were up to 24 people that could stay in the area that I was assigned. It was, anywhere from 18 to 24. It would
So
change.
you were contained all and you had to sleep all together in one room, like military style?
Yeah, and we had bunks that were into the walls, and we would sit in the bunk. You'd sit in your bunk, close your divider, and you had a little organizer section that you could put whatever items that you had.
Did they keep you on a 24-hour cycle like on Earth? It's the same kind of measurement of time?
Right.
Did they light the ship in any way that would indicate to your body that you're on a cycle?
Yep. They try to keep a circadian cycle going, because that seems to be, and pipe the Schumann resonance in, try to keep everything what the human body's used to for health reasons.
Did some people work the night shift?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh yeah. You had constantly people were on duty.
How are you getting water? Obviously, water on Earth requires a hydrological cycle with clouds and rain, and water is so scarce on Earth now with like California's drought. How do you guys have it in the middle of space?
Water is not scarce in the solar system. And when you're on board a vessel like that, let's just put it this way, everything is recycled.
So the whole ship is designed to recycle everything?
It's a very closed system, self-contained closed system, and yeah, everything is recycled.
Do you end up having to become vegetarian, or do people that like to eat meat still get a chance to eat something like meat, or is it a meat? It's like a. What are your meals?
The quality of them have changed, but they had replicators
Okay.
that produced a certain range of meals, but they also had hydroponic areas where they grew some fresh foods.
So could you hit the button for cheeseburger on a replicator and get a cheeseburger?
It wasn't quite like that. No, you would hit a button and get a pot roast or something like that. And
what were your favorite things the replicator made? Could you give us a list of
I would get the pot roast a lot and mashed potatoes.
Was it a fairly convincing pot roast? Did it actually taste like a real pot roast?
It tasted good, yeah. But
And it came out at the right temperature? Did you then have to heat it once it was made?
no, it came out at a hot temperature.
Could you see the food being formed inside through a glass, or was it dark?
It looked like looks basically like a microwave,
Okay.
the size. And you put in a plate right on the area designed for the plate, close the door, you push the button of what you want, and it makes a noise and it appears. And you open it, and you pull it out, and there's steaming food.
What kind of noise was it?
Similar to a microwave, like they would call it when they would replicate something, they would call it printing something.
Really?
Yeah,
Was there a name for the device? Did you call it something?
a printer.
A printer,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
How did you know what you were going to get? Was there like a digital display that you could choose from a menu that you'd scroll through or something?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't. Well, it was just if you were to look at a microwave, you have a certain amount of buttons that you could push.
So there was a pot roast button?
Yeah, there was
Really?
a button for different meals.
What about beverages? Could you get like a lemonade or like a fruit punch?
Yeah, but you didn't get that through the replicator.
Oh,
There were dispensers for different beverages.
did you grow the vegetables separately from the replicator? Like you can't print a salad?
Well, there were some vegetables like potatoes and stuff like that, but some of the other green vegetables they would grow.
Okay. So if you wanted to have like a salad, is the vending of the salad near where the printer is? Do you have like a refrigerator where the greens are kept or something?
Well, that's when you'd go through the galley area and have certain things that were prepared. You would have times when things would malfunction and you would have to have powdered eggs and ration kind of foods and stuff like that. In they had a galley area that where they had people that would serve up food, slop.
What were you wearing when you worked on this vessel?
Jumpsuits.
So single piece?
Yeah.
What was the color?
Well, different designations, different colors. Sometimes blue, sometimes white. I mean, it's just depending on what area you're working in.
What would the white designate?
White it wasn't really a designation of like a job. It was just, if I was working in the lab area with the eggheads or whatever, I'd wear the white. If I was working in the communication area, I wouldn't wear the white lab jumpsuit stuff.
If you went to the front of the ship and then you walked at a steady pace to the back, how long would that take if you were going to do the whole circuit?
You couldn't walk straight. It was like a maze. Probably take you, I don't know, like 30, 45 minutes of walking all around if you stay on one level.
Is there a predominant look to the walls when you're inside? Like, what's the predominant color of what you're seeing inside?
Well, a lot of them were just metal.
Oh,
Yeah. I was told that a lot of these first craft were built by people that built submarines.
oh.
So it had a lot of the same type of feel and build. And in case there was ever a zero-G environment, there were handles along the wall that you would use to guide yourself.
What was your typical ceiling height inside?
Probably about 8 feet.
Did you have multiple decks? Like you could go from one floor to another?
Yeah, there were multiple decks.
Do you remember how many decks?
I mainly stayed within 4 decks, but I believe there were at least 9 decks.
Did they have a specific classification? Like a name for each deck?
Yeah, it would be, they had designations for each area. There would be level 1, then the dash, they would call it a tack, like 1 tack A, 1 tack B.
Were any of these areas color-coded, like the walls looked a certain way to let you know you're in a certain place?
Well, they also, something that was popular would be the lines, the colored lines on the floor that would lead you. But pretty much it was, you would know where you were going by the designation of the number on the designation number on the door.
You had said that the Alliance intends to hand over this technology to humanity once we go through disclosure.
Yeah, that's the plan. After there's a full disclosure, and after we go through the process of dealing with the full disclosure information and get past whatever trials that are needed and psychologically deal with the process, then all these technologies are going to be brought down to humanity to basically change our lives from us being debt slaves, working every day, paying, working, 8 or 9 hours a day to pay rent and watch TV for a few hours, go to sleep, and then repeat every day, to having a totally different type of life.
Who decides who gets to go out into space? Is there going to be some restrictions on who's allowed to go?
I have no idea how that's going to work out. I know that there are going to be, supposedly it's going to be like a Star Trek type civilization. I know eventually there's going to be tourism to a lot of places in the solar system, and there's going to be a lot of new career types for people.
Do you think there are enough ships that a lot of people here could go pretty quickly if they wanted to once this all opens up?
I believe so, yeah. I believe there's quite enough craft already created that we could use those for non-military purposes.
Oh, this has been really incredible. So again, Corey, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for watching. When you start to get this much specific detail, you can tell pretty easily when people are lying. They start to hesitate, their body language changes, and I've been talking to you for so long about this stuff, and every time I ask you these questions, I learn new things. And I'm convinced that what you're telling us did happen to you. I think there's extensive evidence to prove that based on how it correlates with everything else. So again, I consider you a hero for coming forward, and I really want to thank you for your service to humanity in doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks.